If you can fix the engine, it's yours. He laughed and she replied, "Consider it done." Monica Johnson stopped scrubbing the greasy floor of the auto shop when she heard Richard Miller's loud laugh echo through the entire garage. The owner of Miller's Auto Repair was mockingly pointing at the abandoned white Ford Focus in the darkest corner of the shop, the same car that had been sitting there for over 2 years, collecting dust and serving as storage for old parts. "If you can fix the engine, it's yours," Richard said between laughs that made his shoulders shake, while the other mechanics stopped working to watch the scene unfold. Monica dropped the mop into the bucket of dirty water, wiped her hands on her faded green apron, and stared at Richard with a determination that surprised even herself. "Consider it done," she replied firmly, without hesitating for even a second. Richard's laughter stopped immediately when he saw Monica walk toward the car and pop the hood with precise movements. She began examining the engine with a focus that left everyone intrigued. Her hands touched every part as if she knew each component, every wire, every connection intimately. For 15 long years, Monica had worked as a cleaner in that shop. 15 years of mopping oil-stained floors, organizing scattered tools, sweeping metal shavings, and listening to mechanics' conversations. All that time she had absorbed every whispered word between wrenches and pliers, every technical explanation given by the more experienced workers to the apprentices. What no one there knew was that before picking up brooms and mops, Monica had been a mechanical engineer, graduated from the University of Michigan. But that was in another life, before she lost everything and had to flee Detroit with her young daughter in her arms, leaving behind a brilliant career and a promising future. Richard Miller was a 45-year-old man who had inherited the shop from his father, a respected mechanic in the Brooklyn Heights neighborhood of Chicago. Unlike his father, who treated everyone with respect, Richard had developed a deep bitterness after his wife left him, taking half their assets and leaving behind only criticism about his incompetence as a husband and businessman. Since then, he had taken out his frustration on his employees, especially Monica, whom he always treated with contempt. He constantly made jokes about women not understanding cars and enjoyed humiliating her in front of others, as if it could ease his own pain. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. Now, in front of all the employees who had gathered to witness what Richard expected to be yet another public humiliation of Monica, she worked in complete silence. Her experienced fingers immediately identified the main problems. The ignition system was completely damaged, there were leaks in the fuel system, and several essential parts needed replacing. Frank Thompson, the oldest mechanic in the shop, watched the scene with growing surprise. At 62, he had seen a lot in those garages, but he had never noticed that Monica knew so much about engines. He discreetly approached, pretending to organize his tools, but actually trying to understand how a cleaner could have such advanced technical knowledge. "Mrs. Johnson," Frank whispered, "do you really know what you're doing?" Monica looked up from the engine and met the veteran mechanic's honest gaze. For a moment, she thought about telling him the whole truth, but she decided it wasn't the right time yet. "I learned by watching all of you over the years, Mr. Thompson. You pick up a lot when you pay attention." For the next 2 hours, Monica worked tirelessly on the engine. She carefully cleaned each part, checked all the electrical connections, and pinpointed exactly which components needed replacing. When she finally turned the ignition key, the engine showed signs of life for the first time in years, emitting a low but steady hum that even surprised the most experienced mechanics. Richard felt his blood run cold. That old Ford Focus, despite its age and seemingly worthless appearance, had a perfectly good engine he intended to sell separately to an interested buyer. The deal would net him at least $3,000, money he'd already mentally set aside to pay off some urgent debts. "Hold on," Richard said, trying to mask the desperation in his voice. "I said the car would be yours if you fixed the engine, but I never said anything about it running properly. It only counts if you can make it run for a full week without breaking down even once." Monica took a deep breath, feeling the injustice of the rules changing mid-game, but nodded. "Fine, Richard. 1 week without breaking down, you'll see." In the days that followed, Monica discovered her task would be far harder than she'd imagined. At night, when she wasn't at the shop, someone was sabotaging her work. Parts she'd fixed were damaged by morning. Connections that had worked perfectly were mysteriously undone, and essential tools vanished when she needed them most. That's when she realized critical engine components had been deliberately removed. Without them, it would be impossible to keep the Focus running for more than a few minutes at a time. Jason Cooper, a 28-year-old mechanic who'd only worked at the shop for 6 months, watched the situation with growing outrage. He'd witnessed plenty of humiliations Richard inflicted on employees, but he'd never seen anything as cruel as what was happening to Monica. Jason began leaving parts forgotten near the area where Monica cleaned, never directly, always in a way that seemed accidental. A head gasket here, a temperature sensor there, small components he knew were essential to the project she was working on. Late at night, after finishing her official cleaning shift, Monica stayed in the shop, working on the car in secret. She'd gotten a copy of the warehouse key from Mrs. Jenkins, the woman who ran the shop's cafeteria, and had always shown motherly affection toward her. It was during one of these solitary nights that Monica was discovered by Walter, the night watchman. She was welding a part when she heard footsteps approaching and saw the flashlight beam land on her sweaty, focused face. "Miss Monica, what are you doing here at this hour?" asked Walter, a 50-year-old man with graying hair. Monica's heart raced, certain she'd be fired the next day when Richard found out she'd been using the shop without permission. "Please, Walter, don't tell anyone. I'm just trying to meet the challenge Richard gave me." Walter was silent for a few seconds, observing the neatly arranged tools beside her and the precision with which she worked on the engine. "You really know what you're doing, don't you? It's not just luck." "I do, Walter. I know exactly what I'm doing." To Monica's surprise, Walter confessed that his own mother had endured a similar humiliation years ago when she worked as a seamstress in a textile factory. The boss had made a similar bet, doubting she could operate a complex industrial machine, and she'd proven him wrong. "My mother always told me you should never give up when you know you're right," Walter said. "You can count on me, Mrs. Jenkins. I won't tell a soul." From that night on, Walter became a silent ally. Not only did he keep Monica's late-night repairs a secret, but he also started warning her whenever someone approached the garage during her work sessions. The car began running better and better. Monica had managed to fix the most critical engine issues, and the Ford Focus was now gliding smoothly through the neighborhood streets during the discreet test drives she took on weekends. But Richard was growing angrier by the day as he realized his plan to humiliate Monica was failing. He had bet she'd never get that car running properly, and now he watched as that bet backfired. That's when Richard decided to raise the stakes. One Monday morning, he called Monica in front of all the employees. "Monica, even if you can get that car running, I need to see your driver's license. I can't hand over a car to someone who isn't legally allowed to drive." The silence that followed was heavy as lead. Monica felt her world crumbling. She really didn't have a valid driver's license in America. When she fled Detroit for Chicago, she had lost all her documents and never managed to renew them due to the bureaucratic complications of her situation. I don't have a valid license right now," Monica admitted, tears welling in her eyes. Richard smirked with cruel satisfaction, thinking he'd finally found the loophole to get out of this without losing the car. Then it settled. No license, no car. It was an interesting attempt, but rules are rules. At that very moment, a woman's voice cut through the tense air of the repair shop. "The only rules that matter here are the ones agreed upon at the start of this bet." Everyone turned to see who had spoken. Standing at the entrance was a young woman around 30, dressed in a dark suit and carrying a leather briefcase. Her determined eyes and confident posture made it clear she wasn't there by accident. "Who are you?" Richard snapped, annoyed by the interruption. "My name is Emily Johnson Miller, and I'm a lawyer. I'm also Monica Johnson's daughter." The impact of that revelation was immediate. Monica looked at her daughter with a mix of pride and worry, while Richard struggled to process how a cleaning lady could have a lawyer for a daughter. Emily opened her briefcase and pulled out a small digital recorder. "Richard Miller, on the 15th of this month at 2:23 p.m. you said verbatim, 'If you can fix the engine, it's yours.' I have the full recording of that conversation. made by a witness present at the time. Richard paled. He had no idea that Frank Thompson, troubled by the unfair situation he'd witnessed, had recorded the entire original conversation on his phone and sent it to Emily, who was a lawyer for some acquaintances in the neighborhood. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us newcomers out. Now, back to the story. That doesn't mean anything, Richard argued weakly. She can't drive without a license. You're absolutely right, Emily agreed calmly. My mother can't drive the car on public roads without the proper documents, but that doesn't negate her ownership of the vehicle. The challenge was to fix the engine, not get a driver's license. Richard felt control slipping away. In a moment of desperation and anger, he made a decision that would change everything. You're fired, Monica. Get out of my shop right now and take your know-it-all lawyer daughter with you. Emily smiled serenely, which only made Richard even angrier. I'm sorry to inform you, Mr. Miller, but my mother has job security due to her years of service. According to labor laws, employees with over 10 years at the same company cannot be fired without proven just cause. And accepting a challenge proposed by the boss himself certainly doesn't constitute just cause. By this point, all the employees at the repair shop were watching the argument intently. Frank Thompson, Jason Cooper, and even Walter, who had arrived early that day, watched Richard Miller flounder like a fish out of water. Richard stormed out of the shop, slamming the door so hard the tools hanging on the walls rattled. But his absence didn't mean surrender. It meant he was planning his next move. That night, Richard returned to the shop using his key. He was determined to end this situation once and for all. If Monica wanted that car so badly, he'd make sure she failed so spectacularly that no one would ever question his authority again. Richard popped the hood of the Ford Focus and methodically destroyed all the work Monica had done. He disconnected cables, removed parts, poured sand into the engine oil and damaged essential components. When he was done, that engine was in worse shape than when Monica had first taken on the challenge. But Richard didn't know that Frank Thompson, suspicious of the recent sabotage, had discreetly installed a small security camera pointed at the car. The veteran mechanic had a hunch Richard wouldn't play fair in the end. The next morning, when Monica arrived for another day of work, she found a crowd of employees gathered around the Focus. As she approached and saw the state of the engine, her legs nearly gave out. All her work had been destroyed. Months of dedication, sleepless nights, renewed hope, all reduced to a pile of damaged parts and spilled oil. Tears silently rolled down her face as some of the younger mechanics laughed at the situation. Looks like the cleaning lady wasn't as good a mechanic as she thought, one of them said loudly. Must have messed with something she shouldn't have, another added. That's when Frank Thompson stepped into the center of the group and called for silence. Folks, before we jump to conclusions, I think you all need to see something. The veteran mechanic connected his tablet to a small projector he used to show technical manuals to apprentices. On the shop's white wall, the footage his camera had captured overnight began to play. The silence was absolute, as everyone watched Richard Miller deliberately destroying the engine Monica had fixed. The images were clear and undeniable, the shop owner himself sabotaging his employees' work. This is unacceptable, Jason said, clearly outraged. 15 years she's worked here, 15 years being humiliated by this man, Walter muttered. When Richard arrived for another day of work, he found all the employees gathered in a circle. The tension was thick, and he immediately sensed something had changed. What's going on here? Why isn't anyone working? Frank stepped forward, holding the tablet with the footage. Richard, you need to see this. The images spoke for themselves. Richard watched himself destroying the engine, and when the video ended, he looked around to see only disappointed and angry faces. I can explain, Richard began, but his voice was weak and unconvincing. Explain what? Monica asked, who had arrived and watched the footage with the others. Explain why you'd rather cheat than admit a cleaning lady could be more competent than you. Richard felt cornered. In a panic, he tried to talk his way out of the situation. Monica, let's settle this between adults. Forget this whole car business. I'll give you $5,000 in cash, and we'll pretend this never happened. The offer was tempting. $5,000 was nearly 6 months of Monica's salary. With that money, she could get her documents in order, maybe even find a better job somewhere else. But Monica shook her head. I don't want your money, Richard. I never wanted charity. I want justice. Justice? Richard laughed nervously. What justice? You're a cleaner. I own this repair shop. And that's exactly why you tried to humiliate me from day one, Monica replied with a calm that impressed everyone present, because you can't stand the idea that someone you consider beneath you might be better than you at something. The argument was interrupted by the arrival of an elegant woman in her 40s. She wore expensive clothes and drove a black Lexus that caught everyone's attention in the shop. Richard, what's going on here? Why is everyone standing around? It was Jennifer Miller, Richard's wife, and the one in charge of the shop's finances and administration. She had noticed odd transactions in the company accounts and decided to make a surprise visit to figure out what was happening. Jennifer, it's nothing serious, just a misunderstanding with the staff. Richard tried to downplay the situation, but Frank Thompson stepped forward, holding a tablet. Mrs. Miller, you need to see this. It's about your husband and Mrs. Johnson. Jennifer watched the recordings in silence, and as the footage played, her expression grew sterner. When the video ended, she looked at Richard with a mix of disappointment and anger. Richard, explain this to me. Jennifer, you don't understand. This woman was trying to make a fool of me in front of the employees. The only one making a fool of anyone here is you, Jennifer cut in. And it's not just this. For months, I've noticed irregularities in the shop's accounts. Her tone made it clear the conversation was heading in a direction Richard hadn't expected. What irregularities? Unexplained withdrawals, suppliers being paid for services never rendered, parts bought and then disappearing from inventory. Richard, you've been embezzling from the company. The silence that followed was uncomfortable. Richard looked around and saw every employee hanging on every word. His already tarnished reputation was now in ruins. Jennifer, it's not what you think. Then explain it to me, Richard. Explain why you're using the shop to hide dealings that have nothing to do with auto repair. Explain why you're humiliating loyal employees instead of taking care of the business your father built with so much effort. The mention of Richard's father struck a deep nerve. Robert Miller had been a respected man in the neighborhood, known for treating everyone with dignity and helping those in need. Richard knew he was betraying his father's legacy, but his bitterness had grown stronger than his conscience. Then Monica made a decision that surprised everyone. Can I say something? All eyes turned to her, expecting another confrontation. But what came next completely changed the course of the situation. Richard, I know who you are, or rather, I know who you used to be. Richard froze, both intrigued and uneasy. What are you talking about? You don't recognize me, do you? It's been a long time. But I remember you when you were little, here in your father's shop. I used to come here with my dad when he brought our car in for repairs. Richard narrowed his eyes, trying to process what Monica was saying. My father was an engineer at General Motors, and he always brought our Beetle to your Robert to fix. You must have been about 12 years old, always running around the repair shop, curious about how things worked. Your father always spoke proudly about how you'd become a great mechanic one day. Monica's words hit Richard like a punch to the gut. He really started to remember a little girl who sometimes accompanied a well-dressed man who brought a blue Beetle to the shop. My dad always told me that your Robert was the most honest mechanic he knew, said he never overcharged and always explained exactly what he was doing to the car. You're Engineer Johnson's daughter? Richard asked, his voice choked. Yes, I am. Monica Johnson. The same little girl who used to watch you all work, asking 1,000 questions about how engines functioned. Richard remembered now. Engineer Johnson used to talk at length with his father, and the two men had a genuine friendship, built on mutual respect. The engineer's daughter was a curious child who asked smart questions about mechanics. But how did you... Richard began to ask, but couldn't finish the sentence. How did I end up a janitor? Monica finished for him. Oh, Richard, life sometimes takes us down paths we never imagined. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now, continuing. Monica took a deep breath before going on. It was time to tell the whole truth. After high school, I got a scholarship to study mechanical engineering at the University of Michigan. I graduated with honors, got my master's, started working at a major automaker in Detroit. I had a brilliant career ahead of me. What happened? Jennifer asked, genuinely curious. I married a man who seemed wonderful at first, but turned out to be violent and controlling. When my daughter was born, he got much worse. He started hitting me, threatening me, controlling my every move. The silence in the shop was absolute. Everyone was listening intently. One night, he beat me so badly, I ended up in the hospital. That's when I decided I couldn't stay in Detroit any longer. I took my daughter, who was only 3, and fled to Chicago without looking back. And here, you couldn't work as an engineer? Frank asked. I arrived in Chicago with no documents, no references, nothing. My ex-husband had frozen all my accounts, cancelled my cards. I needed a job urgently to support my daughter, and the only work I could get was as a janitor. Why didn't you try to get back into your profession later? Jason asked. I tried many times, but 15 years out of the field. No connections, no updated skills. Companies preferred hiring fresh graduates. And how was I supposed to study, get certified, take courses, when I had to work double shifts just to pay the bills? Richard listened with growing shame. He'd spent 15 years humiliating a woman who was more professionally qualified than he was. Richard, Monica continued, I never cared about your jokes or humiliation because I knew who I was inside. But when you made that bet for the first time in 15 years, I saw a chance to show what I'm really capable of. Monica, I didn't know. You didn't know because you never bothered to ask. To you, I was always just the janitor, never a person with a story, dreams, knowledge. Jennifer stepped closer to Monica, her eyes filled with tears. Monica, forgive me for what my husband did. That's not who we are as a family. Mrs. Miller, you never treated me poorly. The problem was never with you. It was then that Jennifer made a decision that would change everything. Richard, you heard what she said. 15 years working as a cleaner when she could have been practicing her profession. 15 years being humiliated by you. This has to be made right. What do you mean, made right? First, you'll honor your bet. The car is hers, and you'll fix everything you destroyed using money from your personal account. Jennifer. Second, you'll promote Monica to technical supervisor at the shop with a salary that matches her qualifications. Technical supervisor? She's a cleaner. She's a mechanical engineer, Richard, and from what we saw today, she knows more about engines than many mechanics out there. Monica stepped in. Mrs. Miller, I appreciate it, but I don't want to cause more problems in your family. You're not causing any problems, Monica. The one who caused them was my husband, and now he's going to fix them. But Richard wasn't ready to accept the situation quietly. Jennifer, have you lost your mind? I can't promote a cleaner to supervisor. Why not? Because she's a woman? Because she's black? Because you can't admit she might be better than you? Jennifer's question hit the heart of the matter. Richard truly couldn't accept that a black woman who had worked as a cleaner for 15 years could have more technical knowledge than him. That's when Monica made her move. Jennifer, can I suggest something different? Of course, go ahead. Instead of supervisor, how about giving me a chance to prove what I can do as a mechanic? Give me a trial period with fair pay and let me prove my worth through my work. Monica, you've already proven your worth, said Frank. 15 years watching, learning, absorbing knowledge, and today you showed you know more than many certified mechanics out there. It's true, Jason agreed. You know this shop better than any of us. Richard still resisted. This is ridiculous. You want to turn my shop into some social experiment? No, Richard, Jennifer said firmly. We want to turn your shop into what it should have always been, a place where talent is recognized no matter who the person is. The argument was interrupted by the arrival of a well-dressed older man who approached the group curiously. Excuse me, is everything all right? I was passing by and saw this commotion. Richard recognized the visitor immediately. "Dr. Andrews, what are you doing here?" Dr. William Andrews was a corporate lawyer and one of the shop's oldest clients. He had known Robert Miller decades ago and kept his Cadillac in perfect condition thanks to Miller's auto repair. "I came to bring my car in for its monthly checkup," Dr. Andrews explained, "but it seems I picked a complicated time." "It's nothing serious, Doctor," Richard tried. "Just some internal matters." But Jennifer didn't let the opportunity pass. "Dr. Andrews, you handled Robert's father's will, didn't you?" "Yes, I did. Why?" "Do you remember that special clause Mr. Miller insisted on including?" Richard felt his blood run cold. He had completely forgotten about that clause, buried among dozens of other legal provisions in his father's will. "Oh yes," Dr. Andrews recalled. "Robert was very specific about it. He said if Richard ever failed to uphold the shop's values, if he didn't treat employees with respect, or if he neglected his commitment to the community, the shop should go to whoever best represented those values." "What do you mean, go to whoever?" Richard asked, already knowing he wouldn't like the answer. "Your father established a board made up of long-time clients and veteran employees. If this council unanimously decided that you were not honoring the legacy of the repair shop, they would have the power to appoint a new person in charge." Richard felt his world collapse. He had spent years neglecting the shop, mistreating employees, and now he discovered his actions could cost him everything. "Who is part of this council?" asked Jennifer. "Dr. Charles Wilson, the Miller family's doctor for over 20 years. Mrs. Jenkins, who's worked in the cafeteria since the shop first opened. Frank Thompson, the most senior mechanic. And myself, as the legal representative." Richard looked at Frank, who stood there listening with a serious expression. "Frank, you're part of this council and never told me. Your father asked me never to speak of it unless necessary. He hoped it would never be necessary." Dr. William Andrews continued explaining the details of the clause. Robert was a wise man. He knew children don't always follow their parents' path. That's why he created this safeguard to protect the values he built over a lifetime. "And what happens if the council decides Richard isn't fit?" asked Monica. "The shop goes under temporary management by whoever the council appoints, until someone is found who truly honors Robert Miller's legacy. That person could be an employee, a customer, or anyone who demonstrates the right values." Richard realized his situation was spiraling out of control. Not only was he facing issues with his employees, but now he might lose the shop entirely. "Dr. Andrews," Jennifer said, "I'd like to call a meeting of this council." "Why, Jennifer?" "Because it's time to evaluate whether Richard still deserves to run the shop his father built." Jennifer's proposal caused an immediate uproar. Richard began protesting. Some employees whispered among themselves, and Dr. Andrews seemed to weigh the gravity of the situation. "Jennifer, are you sure about this?" the lawyer asked. "Absolutely. What you saw today was just the tip of the iceberg. Richard has been dishonoring his father's legacy for years." "Very well, Doctor," Andrews agreed. "I'll convene the council for a meeting tomorrow afternoon. Richard, you'll have a chance to defend yourself and prove why you deserve to keep running the shop." Richard left the shop that day, knowing his life was about to change drastically. He had completely underestimated the consequences of his actions, and now he faced the real possibility of losing everything. That evening, Monica was at home talking to Emily about the day's events. They lived in a small but well-kept apartment in Chinatown, the same one Monica had rented when she first arrived in Chicago 15 years ago. "Mom, what do you think will happen tomorrow?" "I don't know, sweetheart. But I know I can't stay silent in the face of so much injustice. Do you have a plan?" Monica smiled for the first time in days. "I do. I'm going to show that council exactly who I am and what I'm capable of." "How?" "Emily, remember those old projects I kept in the chest in my room? The ones from when you worked at the automaker?" "Exactly. I think it's time to bring them out." The next morning, Monica arrived at the shop carrying a folder of old documents. Frank, Jason, and the other employees greeted her with curiosity and anticipation. "Mrs. Johnson, did you bring something special?" Jason asked. "I brought my past, Jason. I brought who I really am." The council meeting was scheduled for 2 in the afternoon. Besides Dr. Andrews, Frank and Mrs. Jenkins, Dr. Charles Wilson was also present, a 70-year-old doctor who had been a personal friend of Robert Miller. Richard arrived accompanied by Jennifer, visibly nervous and trying to articulate some defense for his conduct. Monica was present as a witness, along with several other employees from the repair shop. "Well," began Dr. Andrews, "we're here to evaluate whether Richard Miller still deserves to run Miller's Auto Repair, according to the criteria established by his father, Robert Miller." "Dr. Andrews," Richard interrupted, "I know I've made some mistakes, but this shop is my life. It's all I have." "Richard," said Dr. Wilson, "I've known you since you were a child. I watched you grow up in this shop, learning from your father. But I've also seen how you've changed in recent years." "How have I changed?" "You've become bitter, Richard. You've lost compassion, lost respect for others. Your father would never treat an employee the way you treat Monica." I can change. I can do better." "Maybe," agreed Mrs. Jenkins. "But the question isn't whether you can change. The question is whether you deserve another chance after 15 years of mistreating an exemplary employee." Frank spoke up. "Richard, I've worked at this shop for 22 years. I knew your father, learned from him, respected him as a man and as a boss. But you disappoint me every day." "Why, Frank?" "Because you wasted the chance to learn from Monica. 15 years she worked here, 15 years observing, learning, contributing, and all you did was humiliate her." It was then that Monica asked to speak. "Can I show you something?" She opened her folder and began pulling out old documents, diplomas, certificates, technical projects, patents registered in her name. "These are my bachelor's and master's degrees in mechanical engineering from the University of Michigan. This is a patent I developed for a more efficient electronic fuel injection system. This is a project I created for small engine optimization." Dr. Andrews examined the documents with growing interest. "Monica, these projects are impressive. You're really a trained engineer." "Yes, doctor, and I have a proposal for you." "What proposal?" "If you decide Richard should no longer run this shop, I'd like to apply to take over." The silence that followed was profound. Richard stared at Monica in disbelief while the board members processed the proposal. "Monica," said Dr. Fye. "Wilson, are you sure about what you're saying? Running a shop is a huge responsibility." "I'm sure, doctor. I know this shop better than anyone. I know its problems, its potential, and I have plans to make it something much better." "What kind of plans?" asked Frank. "First, I want to create a training program for young mechanics, especially women and low-income individuals. I want this shop to be a place where anyone with talent has the opportunity to learn and grow." "Go on," encouraged Mrs. Jenkins. "Second, I want to modernize the equipment and work methods. With my engineering experience, I can bring innovations that will improve service quality and reduce costs." "And third?" asked Dr. Andrews. "Third, I want to keep all current employees with better wages and more dignified working conditions. This shop has the potential to be so much more than it is today." Richard finally exploded. "This is ridiculous. You're going to hand my shop over to a janitor." "Richard," Frank said firmly, "she's not a janitor. She's a mechanical engineer who, due to life circumstances, worked as a janitor, but she's always been far more than you ever allowed her to be. And besides," added Dr. Wilson, "she's shown more dignity and professionalism in 15 years of humiliation than you've shown in your entire life as a boss." William asked for some time for the board to deliberate privately. For 20 minutes, the 4 members spoke in low voices, analyzing the entire situation. When they returned, Dr. William announced the decision. "After reviewing all the facts presented, this board unanimously decides that Richard Miller no longer upholds the values established by Robert Miller. Therefore, the management of Miller's Auto Repair will temporarily pass to Monica Johnson until her ability to run the business properly is proven." Richard tried to protest, but Jennifer interrupted him. "Richard, accept the decision. It's fair." "Fair? They're taking everything from me." "No, Richard," said Monica, stepping closer to him. "They're giving you a chance to learn what you should have learned a long time ago." "What do you mean?" "You're not being fired. You'll keep working here, but not as the owner. You'll work as a mechanic, relearning what it means to honor the job. You want me to work for you? I want you to work for the shop, Richard, for your father's legacy. And if you prove you've changed, if you show you've learned to respect people, we can talk about partnership in the future. Monica's generosity left everyone stunned. Even after 15 years of humiliation, she was offering Richard a chance at redemption. Dr. William handed the shop keys to Monica. Monica, this shop is now your responsibility. May you honor Robert Miller's legacy better than his own son did. In the following days, Monica implemented gradual but meaningful changes in the shop. First, she spoke individually with each employee, learning their stories, needs, and aspirations. Frank was promoted to general supervisor with a substantial raise. Jason was given the responsibility of training new mechanics. Walter was moved to the day shift with better working conditions. "Mrs. Johnson," Frank said one morning, "I've never seen this shop run so well." "It's because now everyone feels valued, Frank. When people know they're respected and appreciated, they give their best." At first, Richard resisted the changes, but he gradually began to realize Monica wasn't there to humiliate him, but to teach him lessons he should have learned long ago. "Monica," Richard said one afternoon as they worked together on an engine, "can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why don't you hate me? After everything I've done to you?" Monica stopped working and looked directly into Richard's eyes. "Richard, hating you would waste energy I could use to build something better. Besides, your father was good to me when I was a child. He deserves my effort to save his son too." 3 months after the management change, Miller's Auto Repair had completely transformed. Productivity increased, customers were more satisfied, and the work environment became harmonious. Monica had implemented her training program for young people, and the shop now welcomed students from local technical schools. 2 young women had joined the team as apprentices, breaking traditional barriers in the profession. "Mom," Emily said during a visit to the shop, "you've turned this place into something special." "It wasn't just me, sweetheart. It was the whole team's effort. When people feel respected and valued, they're capable of amazing things." Richard had undergone a remarkable transformation in those 3 months. Working side by side with the employees he once looked down on, he began to understand the value of each person on the team. "Monica," Richard said one Friday afternoon, "I wanted to apologize to you officially." "Richard, no. Let me say this. I spent 15 years being a fool, wasting the chance to learn from an extraordinary person. I can't undo what I did, but I can try to be a better person from now on." "You already are, Richard. Every day I see you treating people with more respect, working with more dedication. Do you think I can ever earn back everyone's trust? I think you're already on the right path. Trust is built through consistent actions day after day." 6 months later, Dr. William Andrews called a new board meeting to evaluate Monica Johnson's trial period as manager of the auto shop. "Monica," said Dr. Andrews, "the results speak for themselves. The shop has never run better, the employees have never been more motivated, and the customers have never been happier." "Thank you, Doctor. But none of this would be possible without the whole team's effort. That brings us to the board's decision," continued Dr. Charles Wilson. "We've decided you should become the official owner of Miller's Auto Repair." "Owner? How?" "Robert Miller established that if his son didn't honor the shop's legacy, it should go to whoever best represented its values. You've proven to be that person." Monica felt tears in her eyes. After 15 years of mopping floors, she would become the owner of the same shop where she had once been humiliated. "But I have one condition," Monica said. "What is it?" "I want Richard to be my partner. He's learned the lessons he needed to learn, and this shop was always his family's dream." Richard couldn't hold back his emotions. "Monica, you really want to give me a chance?" "Richard, your father built something special here. You're part of that story too, and with the changes you've made, you can help write an even better future." Dr. Andrews smiled. Robert Miller would be proud to see how this story turned out. A year later, Miller's Auto Repair had become a benchmark in the area. Monica's training program had already graduated 20 young mechanics, half of them women. The shop had expanded, taking over a neighboring warehouse to house the technical school Monica had founded. Richard had become a valuable partner, applying his hands-on experience to Monica's theoretical knowledge. Together, they made an efficient and complementary team. "You know, Monica," Richard said one afternoon as they supervised the work, "sometimes I wonder what my father would say if he could see all this." "What do you think he'd say?" "I think he'd say it was worth waiting 15 years to see the right person take over his shop." "Richard, your father built something much bigger than just an auto shop. He created a legacy of dignity and respect. We're just continuing his work." Frank Thompson, now 65, approached the two partners. "Mrs. Johnson, Mr. Miller, I have some news." "What is it, Frank?" Monica asked. "I've decided to retire at the end of the year." "Frank, no," Richard protested. "This shop isn't the same without you." "Don't worry, Richard. I'm not abandoning you. I want to become an instructor at Monica's school. Teach the kids everything I've learned over the years." Monica smiled. "It would be an honor to have you as an instructor, Frank." At the graduation ceremony for the first class of Miller's Technical Automotive School, Monica was invited to give a speech. In the small makeshift auditorium in the shop's warehouse, students, families, employees, and customers gathered. "When I came to Chicago 16 years ago," Monica began, "I never imagined my life would take this turn. So I thought I'd lost my chance to practice my profession forever. But I've learned that sometimes life takes us down different paths to teach us lessons we wouldn't learn any other way. I learned that dignity doesn't depend on the position we hold, but on how we treat the people around us. I learned that knowledge isn't lost, it just waits for the right moment to be used. And I learned that second chances exist, both for those who need redemption and those who need to forgive. This school exists to show that talent has no gender, no color, no social class. It exists to prove that when we give equal opportunities to everyone, we discover extraordinary abilities where we least expect them." The audience gave a standing ovation. Among those present, Richard wiped away tears discreetly, thinking about how he'd wasted years being prejudiced and bitter. After the ceremony, Emily approached her mother. "Mom, I'm proud of you. You turned humiliation into a victory, not just for you, but for everyone who works here. Sweetheart, do you know what the hardest part of this whole story was?" "What?" "It wasn't enduring Richard's humiliations. It was keeping alive the hope that one day things could change. There were many nights I thought about giving up, about looking for another job, about accepting that this was my reality forever. But what made you keep going?" "Remembering your grandfather. He always told me that engineers solve problems, they don't run from them. And the biggest problem I had to solve was proving that I was still capable of being who I always was." 2 years later, Miller's Auto Repair had become a success story studied in universities. Monica was invited to give talks on entrepreneurship and resilience, always emphasizing the importance of valuing human potential. Richard had become a passionate advocate for workplace equality. He often shared his own story as an example of how prejudice can blind people to extraordinary talent. "Team," Richard said at a staff meeting, "you know I wasn't an easy person to be around a few years ago." "A few years?" Jason joked. "You were still pretty difficult last year." Everyone laughed, including Richard. "Fair enough, Jason, but what I'm saying is that change is possible. If a stubborn guy like me could learn to be better, anyone can." "Richard," Monica said, "do you know when I realized you'd truly changed?" "When?" "It was when you stood up for Jennifer, our new apprentice, against that customer who said women don't know how to work on cars." Richard smiled. "Oh, that? I couldn't let that slide. After all, if women didn't know how to work on cars, I'd still own this shop." The laughter was loud and shared. 3 years after taking over the shop, Monica was in her office when Jennifer, Richard's ex-wife, came for a visit. "Monica, can I talk to you?" "Of course, Jennifer. Have a seat. I wanted to thank you for what you did for Richard." "I didn't do anything extraordinary, Jennifer." "Yes, you did. You saved his relationship with the kids. Our children are proud of their father again after seeing how he changed working with you. Richard changed on his own, I just gave him an opportunity, and that's exactly why I want to make a proposal." "What proposal?" "I want to invest in expanding your school. I have connections in the education sector, and I believe we can take this project to other cities." Monica was surprised. Jennifer, that would be incredible. But why do you want to do this? Because you've proven that education and opportunity can transform lives, and because I believe America needs more projects like this. 6 months later, the first branch of Miller's Technical Automotive School opened in Cleveland. The project had caught the attention of investors and educational organizations who saw in Monica's model an innovative approach to technical education. "Monica," said Doctor. During a visit to the repair shop, Robert Miller never imagined his small auto shop would spark an educational movement. "Doctor, all we did was apply the values Mr. Robert already lived by, respecting people, valuing honest work, and giving opportunities to those who want to grow," said William. "And the results speak for themselves," added Frank, who now coordinated the instructor program. "Over 200 young people have graduated from our schools." Richard, who had become an expert in human relations within the company, chimed in. "The most remarkable part is seeing how the students themselves transform. They arrive unsure, doubting their abilities, and leave here confident, knowing they can achieve anything." "That's the power of education," said Monica. "When you teach someone to do something well, you're not just teaching a skill. You're showing them they're capable of learning, growing, and becoming better." 5 years after Richard made his teasing bet, Miller's Auto Repair had become a symbol of social change. The network of technical schools Monica created, operated in 12 cities, had trained over 500 professionals, and served as a model for public vocational education policies. One Saturday afternoon, Monica was at the original shop, working on a special project, restoring the old Ford Focus that had sparked the entire transformation. "Mom," said Emily, walking in with an envelope, "a letter came for you." "From whom?" "The Department of Education." Monica opened the letter and read silently, her eyes filling with tears. "What is it, Mom?" "Emily, they want to create a national program based on our school model. They want me to oversee its implementation across the country." Richard, who had just arrived, overheard. "Monica, this is incredible. Will you accept?" "I don't know, Richard. Leading a national program would mean leaving here, our shop, our school." "Monica," Frank said, joining them, "you can't pass up an opportunity like this. Think of how many young people will benefit." "Frank's right," Richard agreed. "You've built something bigger than all of us. Now it's time to take it nationwide." "But what about you all? And the shop?" "The shop will keep running just fine," Richard assured her. "You taught us to work with dignity and respect. Now it's our responsibility to keep that legacy alive." "And the school here?" "I'll take care of the school," Frank said. "I've learned everything you taught me. It's time for you to aim higher." Monica looked around the shop where she'd spent 16 years of her life, where she'd been humiliated, discovered her inner strength, and found professional redemption. "You know what?" she said. "When Richard challenged me to fix that engine, he didn't realize he was giving me far more than a car. He gave me the chance to realize I'd never stopped being an engineer." "And we learned it's never too late for people to change," Richard added. "Or for dreams to come true," Emily said. On the day Monica left for Washington, D.C. to assume her new role, the entire shop team gathered to say goodbye. The restored Ford Focus was parked at the entrance, shining like new. "Everyone," Monica said, "this car represents so much more than a personal victory. It's proof that talent and determination can overcome any prejudice." "Mrs. Johnson," Jason said, "we're going to miss you." "Jason, you won't get rid of me that easily. I'll be back often to visit, check on things, and learn from you all too." Richard walked over with a key in hand. "Monica, this is the key to the main office. Even while leading the national program, you're still a partner in this shop. This will always be your home. Thank you, Richard, and thank you for giving me, even unintentionally, the chance to show who I really am." "Monica, can I confess something?" "Of course. That day when I made the bet, I really hoped you'd fail. I wanted to humiliate you in front of everyone." "I know, Richard. But you know what's funny? If you had failed, if you had given up, I never would have learned the lessons I did. You forced me to be a better person." "Richard, sometimes God uses our worst intentions to create the best outcomes." Frank approached with a bouquet of flowers. "Mrs. Johnson, these flowers are from all of us, and there's a card signed by every student you've ever taught." Monica read the card aloud. "To the teacher who showed us that skill has no gender, color, or social class. Thank you for proving that everyone deserves a chance to prove their worth. You'll always be our inspiration." Tears streamed freely down Monica's face. "Everyone, you have no idea how moving it is to know that one life can make a difference in so many others." "Mrs. Johnson," said a young voice. Everyone turned to see who had spoken. It was Ashley, one of the school's first students, now graduated and working as a mechanic at a dealership. "Ashley, what a surprise to see you here. I couldn't leave without saying goodbye to the person who changed my life. Before I met you, I thought women didn't belong in a garage. Today, I'm the lead technician for a team of 15 mechanics." "Ashley, you earned that with your talent and hard work." "I earned it because you gave me the chance to discover my talent." Dr. Andrews approached the group. "Monica, as the Miller family's attorney, I'd like to make an official statement." "Go ahead, Doctor." "On behalf of Robert Miller, who unfortunately isn't here to see this, I declare that you've honored his legacy in an extraordinary way. He'd be proud to know his repair shop became a cradle of social change. Thank you, Doctor. I tried to live up to the trust you placed in me. And you succeeded brilliantly." As Monica got into the car that would take her to her new challenge in Washington, D.C., she took one last look at the shop that had been the stage for her transformation. The Ford Focus Richard had mockingly offered was now displayed at the school's entrance, with a plaque that read, "This car stands as proof that talent and determination can overcome any obstacle." Richard waved from the shop's doorway, alongside Frank, Jason, Walter, and all the other employees who had become her professional family. "Richard," Monica called through the car window, "take good care of our shop." "You got it, Monica, and you take good care of our America." As the car drove away, Richard walked into the shop and headed to Monica's old office. On the desk, she had left a note. "Richard, thank you for teaching me the greatest lesson of my life. It doesn't matter where we start, but where we have the courage to go. Take care of our employees, take care of our students, and always remember that respect and dignity are the most important tools in any profession. With love, Monica." Richard folded the note carefully and tucked it into his wallet. Then he walked to the workshop where the school operated and found Frank teaching a new class of students. "Mr. Thompson, can I speak to the class for a minute?" "Of course, Richard." Richard stood before the 20 young faces watching him intently. "Everyone, do you know who Monica Johnson was?" "The school's founder," they answered in unison. "That's right. But do you know how she started here?" The students shook their heads. "She started as a janitor. For 15 years she mopped the floors of this repair shop while watching, learning, and dreaming of an opportunity." "And when did that opportunity come?" asked a student. "When someone doubted her ability. When someone thought they could humiliate her by making a bet they were sure she'd lose." "Who made that bet?" asked another student. Richard took a deep breath. "I did. And it was the best thing I ever did in my life, even if for the wrong reasons." "What do you mean, Professor Richard?" "Because in trying to humiliate Monica, I ended up discovering I was wasting the talent of an extraordinary person. And I learned that prejudice doesn't make us superior, it just blinds us to the qualities of others." "And what do we learn from that?" asked Frank. "That we should never underestimate anyone," replied a student, "and that opportunity is all a talented person needs." "Exactly," Richard agreed. "And that's why this school exists, to give opportunities that might be denied elsewhere." 6 months later, Monica was in Washington, D.C., overseeing the implementation of the National Integrated Technical Schools program when she got a call from Richard. "Monica, I have some news for you." "Good or bad?" "Depends on your perspective. Frank decided to retire for good." "Wow, that's a big change. How will you replace your Frank?" "Actually, we've already found the perfect replacement." "Who?" "Ashley. Remember Ashley, our former student?" "Of course, the one who became the technical manager at the dealership." "Exactly. She decided to leave her job to come back as our school's academic coordinator." "Richard, that's wonderful. Ashley knows both sides. She was a student and is now an experienced professional. And there's more news. Go on. We got a proposal from a private university to create a higher education program in automotive engineering in partnership with our school. Really? That would be fantastic. Monica, you've created something that's growing beyond all our dreams. We created it, Richard. We created it together. 2 years later, Monica returned to Chicago for the inauguration of the first higher education program created in partnership with Miller's Technical Automotive School. The auditorium was packed with officials, educators, business leaders, and most importantly, current and former students from the network. When I left here 2 years ago, Monica said in her speech, I carried with me the certainty that you would keep making a difference in people's lives. Today I return and see you've surpassed all expectations. Technical education in America has reached a new level in recent years, and much of that is thanks to the model we developed here based on simple values: respect, opportunity, and excellence. But I want to make it clear that none of this would have been possible without the transformation of one very special person. Richard Miller, come up here. Richard stepped onto the stage to warm applause. Richard, do you want to tell everyone how our story began? Richard took the microphone with trembling hands. Folks, 8 years ago I made the worst bet of my life. I offered an old car to a janitor, thinking she'd never be able to fix it. I was trying to humiliate an employee who'd worked 15 years in my shop, just because I couldn't accept that a black woman might understand mechanics better than me. That bet changed my life, because it showed me that prejudice is a prison. I was trapped by my own wrong ideas, missing the chance to learn from an extraordinary person. Monica didn't just fix the car, she fixed me too. She taught me that leadership isn't about power, it's about service. That success isn't about being above others, it's about lifting others up with you. The audience gave a standing ovation. Richard continued, If there's one lesson I want to leave for all of you, it's this. Never, ever underestimate a person's potential because of appearances. Talent doesn't choose gender, color, or social class. Talent just needs opportunity to shine. Monica took back the microphone. Richard just spoke about opportunity, and that brings me to the announcement I came to make today. The auditorium fell completely silent. The National Integrated Technical Schools Program has been approved by Congress. Over the next 5 years, 200 technical schools will be established across the country, following the model we developed here. The explosion of applause was deafening. And there's more, Monica continued as the noise subsided. Each school will be named after someone who overcame prejudice to achieve their goals. The first school, which will open in New Orleans, will be called the Robert Miller Technical School, in honor of the man who created the values that still guide us today. Dr. Andrews, now 80 years old but still sharp and active, took the stage. Monica, on behalf of the Miller family, I want to say that Robert would be proud not just of what you've built, but especially of how you built it, with honesty, dignity, and love for others. After the ceremony, Monica walked through the repair shop, remembering the days she used to mop those very floors. Richard walked beside her, lost in his own memories. Monica, can I ask you a personal question? Of course. Did you ever feel like giving up during the worst moments of humiliation? Monica stopped walking and looked directly at Richard. Many times, Richard, especially in the first few weeks after you made that bet. I'd wake up in the middle of the night wondering if I was being foolish, if I should just accept that as my reality forever. What made you keep going? The memory of my father. He always said engineers don't quit when they face a tough problem, they find creative solutions. My problem was proving I could still be an engineer. The solution was not giving up until I succeeded. And if I hadn't made that bet, Monica smiled. Richard, if you hadn't made that bet, I'd probably still be mopping this floor. Sometimes the bad things that happen to us are exactly what we need to discover our true strength. So you're thanking me for being a prejudiced jerk? I'm thanking you for giving me the chance to prove that prejudiced jerk wrong. They both laughed. Monica, there's something I never told you. What? The night before I made that bet, I'd gotten an offer to sell the shop. A business group wanted to buy the land to build a mall. Really? And you thought about selling? I did. I was tired, unmotivated, thinking I couldn't uphold my father's legacy. If you hadn't taken my challenge, if you hadn't forced me to see my own prejudice, I probably would have sold everything. And look what happened, Monica said, gesturing to the bustling shop and school. Instead of a mall, we have a center for social change. It's amazing how one decision can change everything, huh? Richard, you know what I've learned all these years? What? That there are no coincidences, just preparation meeting opportunity. I spent 15 years preparing, observing, learning. When you gave me the chance, even unintentionally, I was ready. At the end of the day, as the shop was closing, Monica walked over to the Ford Focus still displayed at the school's entrance. She ran her hand over the shiny hood, remembering the first time she'd opened it 8 years ago. Emily walked up. "Mom, what are you thinking about?" "I'm thinking this car taught me the most important lesson of my life." "What's that?" "That it doesn't matter how long something has been sitting still, broken, or abandoned. If you have the knowledge, patience, and determination, it's always possible to make it work again." "Are you talking about the car or yourself?" "Both, dear. Both. End of story. Now tell me what you thought of this story and where you're listening from. If you have something to share with us, leave your honest thoughts in the comments. Do you believe Monica made the right decision by forgiving Richard and making him her business partner? We'd love to hear your opinion. Thank you so much for joining us. Don't forget to like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other heartwarming stories.